My name is Alexa, and this is the story I have never told anyone completely. There was a time when I believed walking away was the best decision I could make. I thought leaving would protect my heart, bring me peace, and help me start over. At that moment, I couldn't see any other choice. Life had become overwhelming. Every day felt heavier than the last. I was tired of pretending that everything was fine when deep inside, I was falling apart. I smiled in front of people, but when I was alone, I cried quietly. I kept asking myself if I was strong enough to keep going. Then one day I made a decision that changed everything. I packed my things, looked around one last time, and left without looking back. I told myself it was for the best. I believed the pain would disappear once I was gone. For the first few days I felt relieved. The silence felt peaceful, and I convinced myself that I had made the right choice. But as time passed, the silence became loneliness. The memories I tried to escape followed me everywhere. I started thinking about the people I had left behind. I wondered if they missed me, or if they had already moved on. Every what if echoed in my mind. What if I had stayed? Would things have turned out differently? Would I still have lost the people who mattered most? I didn't know the answers. All I knew was that my heart was filled with regret. Looking back now, I realized that some decisions can change your life forever. Mine certainly did. This is the beginning of the journey that taught me one painful lesson. Sometimes leaving isn't the hardest part. Sometimes living with the regret is. The days slowly turned into weeks, but the feeling of regret never left me. I tried to keep myself busy. I focused on work, spent time with people, and told everyone that I was doing fine. The truth was, every quiet moment reminded me of what I had walked away from. One evening, while cleaning my room, I found an old photo tucked inside a notebook. It was a picture of us smiling together. Looking at it brought back memories I had tried so hard to forget. I remembered the laughter, the long conversations, and the promises we made. We weren't perfect, but we were happy in so many little ways. Tears filled my eyes. For the first time, I admitted something I had been denying for months. I didn't leave because I stopped caring. I left because I thought it was the only way to protect myself. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying our last conversation in my mind. I remembered the words that were said, and the words that were never spoken. Maybe if I had stayed a little longer, maybe if I had listened instead of walking away, maybe everything would have been different. The next morning, I gathered the courage to send a message. My hands were shaking as I typed. Hi, I've been thinking about you. I hope you're doing well. I stared at the screen for several minutes before finally pressing the send button. Then I waited. 1 minute. 5 minutes. An hour. There was no reply. As the sun began to set, I realized that sometimes the hardest part isn't saying you're sorry. It's wondering whether you're already too late. And deep inside, I feared that I was. The next morning, the first thing I did was check my phone. Nothing. No message. No missed call. No sign that my words had been seen. I tried to convince myself that maybe they were just busy. And as the hours passed, hope slowly faded. For days, I carried my phone everywhere. Every notification made my heart race, only to end in disappointment. Finally, a reply came. It was short. I'm okay. I hope you're doing well too. I read those words over and over again. There was no anger, no warmth, just distance. It felt like talking to a stranger. I wanted to explain everything, to tell them how scared I had been, how lost I felt, and how leaving was never because I stopped caring. But where could I even begin? Some wounds are too deep for a single apology. A few days later, I found the courage to ask if we could meet. To my surprise, the answer was yes. We agreed to meet at the small cafe where we used to spend hours talking about our dreams. Walking there, my heart beat faster with every step. When I arrived, they were already sitting by the window. For a moment, everything around me disappeared. It felt like time had stopped. They looked up and smiled politely, but it wasn't the smile I remembered. It was the smile people give when they're trying to be kind. We talked about work, life, and the weather. Everything except the real reason we were there. The silence between us spoke louder than our words. As I looked into their eyes, I realized something that broke my heart. Life had moved on for both of us, but only one of us was still living in the past. And that person was me. After we left the cafe, I walked home alone. The streets were busy, but I barely noticed the people around me. My mind kept replaying every moment of our conversation. I had imagined that meeting would fix everything. Instead, it showed me how much had changed. That night, I sat by my window, watching the rain fall. I finally accepted something I had been refusing to believe. Time doesn't stop just because our hearts do. While I was holding on to the past, they had been learning how to move forward. A few days later, I received another message. I hope you find the happiness you're looking for. It was a kind message, but it felt like a goodbye. I stared at the screen for a long time before putting my phone down. For the first time, I didn't cry. Instead, I smiled through my tears. Not because I was happy, but because I understood. Love isn't always about holding on. Sometimes, love means letting someone live the life they have chosen, even if it doesn't include you. I began focusing on myself again. I started reading more, taking long walks, and spending time with the people who truly cared about me. Little by little, the heavy feeling inside my heart became lighter. The memories were still there, but they no longer controlled me. One evening, I looked at the old photo that had once made me cry. This time, I smiled. I whispered, "Thank you. Thank you for the beautiful memories. Thank you for the lessons. And thank you for helping me become a stronger person." I finally realized that my biggest regret wasn't leaving. It was believing that one mistake meant my story was over. I was wrong, because every ending is also the beginning of a new chapter. And mine was just about to begin. A year passed. Life looked very different from the way it had before. The pain that once kept me awake at night had slowly faded. The memories were still there, but they no longer hurt the way they used to. Instead of feeling regret, I felt gratitude. I had learned so much about myself during that year. I learned that healing takes time. I learned that some questions never get answers. And I learned that life keeps moving forward, even when we wish we could go back. One sunny afternoon, I was walking through a park when I saw a familiar face in the distance. It was them. For a moment, my heart skipped a beat. We smiled and greeted each other warmly. There was no awkwardness, no sadness, no bitterness. Just two people who had once shared an important chapter of their lives. We talked for a few minutes about work, family, and the future. Before leaving, they looked at me and said, "You seem happy." I smiled. "I am." And for the first time, I truly meant it. As we said goodbye, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Peace, not because everything had worked out the way I once wanted, but because I had finally accepted the past. That evening, I sat by my window and watched the sunset paint the sky with shades of gold and orange. I thought about the question that had followed me for so long. What if I had stayed? Maybe things would have been different. Maybe they wouldn't. But I finally understood that spending my life chasing what if would only stop me from appreciating what is. My story was never about losing someone. It was about finding myself. And sometimes, the hardest goodbye leads us to the most important journey of all. My name is Alexa. This is my story. And if there's one lesson I've learned, it's this. The past can teach you, but it should never stop you from living the future waiting ahead of you.